You're watching Sokoni. Welcome back. And finance bill, of course, is a contentious issue, and the house levy that is tucked away inside there is also attracting a lot of discussions and controversies around it. And this is what also Victor had drawn earlier. And the flocks, they can be seen there to be the sheep. And the president, he is particularly intent to make sure that the finance bill, which is facing so many, oh yes, definitely, yes sir, support. There's no other option, as we've heard also from the principal Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, that you have no option but to accept the taxes. And for the next 3 years, things are not going to be any rosy. Things are going to be tough, so you need to brace up yourself. And this is what we are broaching with our panelists here. We have Engineer Patrick Obath with us, who is the chair of KEPSO Foundation. Also, we do have with us Bill Okero, who is a businessman and a politician. And also, we do have with us as well Professor Gituro Wanaina, who is a professor at the School of Business, University of Nairobi. We're still eagerly waiting also for Dr. Jim McPhee to join us as well. He was to join us. He has not yet done this. Maybe also it eluded him. or he slept through the alarm this morning.
It's not like him.
It isn't like Dr. McPhee.
It's not like
McPhee. But we continue with the conversation. Before we took a short break, I'd asked that particular question. Maybe we can learn from the past. The government was having good intentions to make sure also that we have the slum upgrade. These houses that you're talking about, that even people who are owning the houses in Kibra, few of them are not the real beneficiaries that they should have gotten these houses before. So what really went wrong with that particular project that has never been probed? And now we can actually get some silent points moving forward where we can actually embrace this house levy. It's beautiful, you say, but the implementation, the way it's being done, it's actually wrong-headed.
My take on what happened in the Kibera Majengo slum upgrading project, yes. Where we saw many houses come up during the tenure of President Kibaki. My understanding is the priorities. That the people whose houses were being upgraded, who are living in slums, by and large, had challenges regarding income, sources of living, the cost of living. These are people who are trying to make ends meet. That's why you are in that place. You are unable to make ends meet. You cannot put food on the table. You don't have an income. You probably make 100 shillings a day. And that's why you are there. So when you do not have any income, and you're probably earning a day 200 shillings, and the government says, okay, we'll put up a house, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom house for you. It's difficult for you to maintain yourself in that environment. And so that's one. So for me, it's lack of priorities, really. And this is the same challenge we have today. We are telling the government, please, the priority is food, the priority is employment, the priority is income. Housing or shelter comes down. Even on the basic household's hierarchy of needs. I mean, you first deal with those issues for the people. But I think, secondly, the way the houses were being allocated, they were going to the wrong people. The story came out. I mean, all of you read it in the media those days. Senior government officials were the ones getting the houses. Their friends were the ones who were getting the houses. The houses were being sold. So the whole process of allocation, of giving the criteria, was also flawed, and there was a lot of questions of integrity in the whole matter. So I think it flopped, in my view. But this is a country which has an opportunity to really deal with these issues of housing. We have the United Nations Habitat headquarters here in UNEP, and this is a country where we have solutions are not difficult to find, and they're willing partners who can do that, and their business people who are willing to invest. So I think it's about the policy environment, it's about the government itself. So if those issues of trust deficit in government can be addressed, I don't think housing should be a major problem.
And we have a summit also from the UN Habitat, I think the second summit on housing still happening here in Nairobi.
But the Kibera upgrades, slum upgrading program, KENSAP as it was called, was actually a joint project between Habitat and the Kenya government. But the premises were completely wrong. And somehow, Habitat and people like that, they come up with these great ideas about upgrading slums. Now, when you're going to upgrade a slum, you're not upgrading the housing. You are upgrading a whole ecosystem. And if you don't start with the basics, as Bill has said, the income that those people have, that's the first thing you go to upgrade, so that they're able to afford whatever you're upgrading. But if you start upgrading without upgrading their income, they'll move to the place where they can afford. And that's exactly what happened with Kibera, right? And because they moved to where they can afford, obviously the people, all the Nyangaos like myself who are there, come in and start buying those things, and we become the owners. Yeah,
the predators.
Yeah, the predators are all there, waiting for that to happen. So if you're going to start doing affordable housing, upgrading people like that, you must upgrade their position in life. Create an economic activity that can survive and change the lives of those people. And the minute that happens, their needs will begin to change. And then you address those changing needs over time. But to go and say we want to make Kibera into a modern slum in one foul swoop and just say housing is a thing that's going to happen, it ain't going to happen. So I think really, when we talk about all these social transformation projects that you're trying to do,
yes,
we have to understand the basic thing is that, what I think this was the ANC, not ANC, whatever it is, the Mani
Economic
National Congress.
Fera.
Yeah?
Yes.
No, Mani National Congress, the same person, Sokoni. That's the first thing you have to do.
Right.
You have to put money in people's pockets through an economic transformation.
Yeah. And Patrick made that point. You made that point earlier on. The point of focusing on what will make a game changer here. And the opportunity relies on production, agriculture.
Yeah.
Does it? And to answer your question, it was simply, it's like I buy an expensive car, but I have nowhere to sleep. I can't sleep in that car. It was simple. You give me a house here in Kibla, but I can't even have food on the table. So what the hell should I buy in that house? That was it. And then the whole concept that I get this house, and the first thing I don't have the table, so the first thing I'm going to sell to the Nyangaus. It was a very well organized way of people owning houses there. But of those people, they could not.
Yeah.
And let's look at the narrative. And I like the point coming in terms of the needs. If we address the issue of food production, and I have an interesting graph I got from 1964 to 2022. And I was there looking at our exports and imports. And from 1995, we have been importing more than we are exporting. The deficit has been increasing, which tells you we're even importing things we don't need. If you look at a country like Japan, if you do the same thing for a country like Japan, they're exporting more than importing. Just give an example. My brother here has a Toyota.
yes,
You go anywhere in the world, that is the export from those countries. So what do? They look, what are our basics? Is to get more, is to manufacture more, is to export more. And if we can, what is our comparative advantage? Is food production. Not even, and you cannot talk about manufacturing, because the manufacturing, the raw materials are coming from the land. So the whole concept that Patrick's bringing, let's focus on production. What is the product of food? Then, housing, I'm not even sure housing was among the muscles. And if it was down shelter. And shelter could make a lot of shapes. The kind of flats is really the low class people, and that kind of thing they're looking. I'm here in a very tired room, but I have nothing to eat.
indeed.
So I think as a government and as Kenyans, we can cut on feeding our people, exporting less. Sorry, importing less.
Importing less, yeah.
Importing less will grow the economy. If you look at that, it's worrying how the deficit is getting longer and larger in terms of we're importing more. And some of the imports we are doing are actually what I would call luxury goods.
Luxury goods.
Yes.
Thank you.
Because if you look something like, and there was something in the social media, there was a car in town, everybody looking at it, 45M on a car. Now, that's fine if you can afford it. But you're looking to the coffer of the foreign exchange. because you don't buy it in Kenya shillings out there. You buy it in dollars. So if Diba want to bring that 45 million car, let him bring it, but we'll tax you heavily, extremely heavily, so that you boost the economy and we start exporting. Now, a tiny country, and I remember Diba, the week after the 24th of February last year, we had that debate of what will happen in Ukraine in terms of the war to the grains. And you see what has happened. And I remember I was trying to be optimistic not much. Iraq is saying, you see the impact. It's a grain exporter. Why can't we focus back on exporting the grain?
Thank you. All right. All right. I just want to, unless we have any other reason or feedback or regarding this particular topic, I want us to gravitate to where the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce is headed right now, because I think next week there will be an election. Is it next week? Isn't it? For the chair? Yeah, for the chambers, they will be having an election. But we have also the trade CS. This is Moses Kuria, who is saying small business must join trade lobby or fall. That is the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce, and small businesses will have to pay a minimum of 5,000 shillings subscription to the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry after the government announced plans to make it mandatory for all companies to join the lobby. Investment, Trade and Industry Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria said that the government was working on a law that will make it mandatory for all businesses to be member of Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry in a bid to strengthen it. The CS, who was speaking at the 3rd Kenya International Investment Conference, said the proposal law will be submitted to Cabinet for approval within 30 days. So that is another also sort of a tax, because you have a mandatory, of course, subscription there. Let's just listen into what the CS had to say.
We are going to have the chamber, the Kenya chamber. I'm not talking about the various configurations as they are. That is truly reflective of Kenyan business. A chamber which even Stanley can say, I'm proudly a member. A chamber which even Facebook has to say that I am proudly a member of the Kenyan chamber. A chamber that can be of equal footing with the US chamber, with the AmCham, with the Chinese chamber, with the European Business Council. We really put our businesses there, because people, let us be organized. If you don't get organized, there is no way to help you. And the way to help you is to organize you in something that you can feel proud. So in the chamber law, it is going to be mandatory for every registered business in Kenya to be a member of the chamber. It is not going to be a choice. It is going to be mandatory.
All right, Patrick, but you want to weigh in on this as well?
Yeah, I knew you were going to put me in that place, because
He has been in the chamber.
I know you're going to put me in that. But let's think about, why do you have chambers of commerce? Why do you have business associations in the first place?
What are the pulling factors?
Let us understand why people become members, right? And we, as the chair of KEPSA, almost 8 years ago, we actually went abroad to find out how do businesses organize themselves in successful countries. So we went to Singapore, we went to the UK, we went to the US. 3 different ways of getting businesses to work. And each of them had their own way of working, which was historical, and based on how the countries had actually come up. And the youngest one, which is Singapore, and we are young compared, actually had the most interesting model. Right? They have what is called the Singapore Business Federation.
Yes.
Right? And the Singapore Business Federation is almost what C.S. Kuria was talking about. It is a mandatory, all companies above a certain turnover, not turnover, but share capital, or capitals, or the capital they have on the stock, or stock exchange, or they paid up capital as per the registration. right? They have classifications based on the value of the company. So they have to be statutory members of the Singapore Business Federation. So it's not anybody. You don't start at, every small trader has to be there. So those companies have to be there by law. So if you become above a certain size, you have to pay, and there's a payment. I think they're paying about $280 per year or something like that, yeah?
Yes.
Which is a reasonable amount of money if you're going to talk about that. So it's purely administrative fee. Then you've got what are called constituent members. And the constituent members are all the business membership organizations. So the Chamber of Commerce is a member. The Bankers Association would be a member. The Association of Contractors, all of them would have to be members of the Singapore Business Federation, but they are constituent members because they represent specialized areas. And they are allowed to have their own members because it is a kind of it's a lobby group for those specialized areas. And then you have associate members. And these are now the small people. Yeah? And they also have their own rating on that basis. But there are very clear deliverables that the Singapore Business Federation has got to give to its membership.
Right.
And there's a reason why I would come in. And I pay for the services that they give. So it is a very well structured way of getting businesses to be in that place. But remember, this was formed in 2001. About 2000, 2001, they're because Singapore was now trying to link its businesses to global businesses. So they had a successful internal economy. They had a lot of large businesses in Singapore, which were working in that country. Now in Kenya, who do you have? Who you would be trying to promote to work with companies abroad? You probably have about 15, 20 companies that have the capital to be able to work with international people. How many people in Kenya are willing to go into that pipeline to invest? How many Kenyans have invested outside Kenya? You can probably count them in your hand. So what value would be forcing people into that area to go out and invest? Because a federation like that, its main purpose is to link investors, right?
Right.
In Kenya, most people are actually looking to come in, and that's why we're trying to encourage investors to come in. What happened to Ken Invest? That was a vehicle that was created to target Kenya as an investment destination. Now, if you form a chamber and you're trying to sort of link businesses together, which businesses in Kenya are you linking with businesses outside? How many Kenyan businesses can go to London and say, I want to partner with X? Number is very small. So in my view, and this is a very, it's a personal view, what you're creating a fund for people to travel. That's all that's going to be. When you talk about, going out on investment conferences, whatever it is and so forth, what is attracting people to come and invest in Kenya?
But
Ken Invest as an organization was established almost 15 years ago to become an attractive, to attract investment into Kenya. And it has not been able to do it. And when people come and invest in Kenya, they're handed out because of politics.
so let
Right?
me
I'll talk about Dominion Farms, that which is close to my home.
yeah.
Right? Who have closed business in Kenya because of what happened. And they came in, under Ken Invest, they did all these things. They came in, invested in this country, and started actually production. Local politics got in the way, and they were handed out. And what has happened? The place where they used to be now is a swamp. And in fact, now flooding is happening because of all the infrastructure they put in is not being looked after. What value is this Chamber of Commerce that is being done going to give to me as somebody who wants to do business in this country?
So if I'm a member of KEPSA, for instance, do I necessarily have to be a member of a Kenya Chamber of Commerce?
It is your choice.
It's your choice.
It's your choice where you join, because you're joining to be there for a reason. And KEPSA has got to be attractive for you to come in.
But now it sounds
And the
like
National Chamber of Commerce-
it won't be any choice for you anymore.
No, they're
That's
putting
what
a
you're saying.
super. In fact, it's not the Chamber of Commerce. I think they're thinking of putting a super body above all of those.
You see,
Above Kenya Chamber of Commerce.
Above all of it's a Kenya Business Chamber.
Kenya
You know the
Business
Chamber
Chamber.
of Commerce.
Not okay.
Yeah.
I thought it's mandatory to join the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce,
no,
according
no,
to the
no,
report.
No, you see, what is the Chamber of Commerce? It's an association or a network of businesses.
Yeah.
To promote the interest of
Interest.
those members.
Yeah.
So, and in business, by the way, there are very many of these things. Professional firms have their own, lawyers, accountants, engineers, everyone has. Manufacturers,
Yeah.
you have private sector, you have Kamchambomko. So these things are not something which you can statutorily enforce. But I want to look at it from a different perspective. The Chamber of Kenya has not been particularly very useful, and I'll tell you why. Part of the reason, of course, by the government itself, because they don't appreciate these institutions. Let me tell you. This CS in particular, who boasts of having traveled in this world in the last few months of I don't know how many trips to promote business, has he done one single trip with anyone from the Kenya Chamber of Commerce? Has he traveled with Keninvest? Has he traveled with Kenya Association of Manufacturers? Has he traveled with anybody in the private association? None. He goes because they believe that as a ministry they know everything. And you've seen him live on TV, you've seen him watched, and when he's visiting all these countries. None. We are in these organizations. They don't appreciate you completely. And so the government is the single biggest challenge in the development of these associations and business in this country. So I think, in my view, even protecting the interest or promoting the interest of members, it doesn't. I was a member. I had companies that are members of Chamber of Commerce. And we had challenge in one of the countries, Saudi, where we were importing and we were exporting, and we were, we lost money to customers who failed to pay us. And I went there personally several times to try and talk to them. You guys, this is Chamber of Commerce. Can't you do something? Nothing. Including our embassies, by the way. So so it doesn't really, they don't add value. So you cannot force, trying to force is just creating another gravy train for public servants. For them it's good, because he needs money, he'll call Chamber of Commerce to send some money. And for them it's just money making everything. They don't think of the business aspect. He doesn't.
Yeah.
Let him tell you your journalist, ask him whether there's any meeting he has had with the Kenya Chamber of Commerce to discuss how to promote business for their members or to address the challenges of their members. So, nobody cares about those things.
And it's interesting when you mentioned Keninvest, and really remember that time we were somewhere in Tokyo, three of us. There was Moses Ikiara, he was a MD for Keninvest for a long time. Sylvester Kasuku, selling Lapset, and I was there for the Vision 2030, and Uhuru then was the president. Very interesting discussions, because you could see Kasuku is here really selling Lapset. And here, I coming in saying, this is within our blueprint. And then Moses would come, and this what we'll give you as investors when you come to Kenya. Very clear line to deal with it. And that was so well structured as a government way of bringing investors. And my take is here, yes, the government has a responsibility, but the moment it starts kicking in what the chamber does, you get difficulties there. I think Gatia is the current chair of the chamber, isn't it? And remember, with a lot of nostalgia, Masharia, when he was of Keninvest, of the chamber. And their benefits, and as Patrick's pointing out, and this is always an approach. If you want somebody to join something or join your ball game, what are the benefits? Why am I joining it? And I can talk about 4 or 5. The first one is access to resources. Because you have the credibility. I said, if I join this, there's actually opportunity for access to capital. Capital, grow, create wealth. The second aspect you want to look there is the relationship you have within there, and therefore the marketing of your product. I can use this arm to market my product. You're looking at the issue of the processes, the streamlined processes, the quality assurance, all that. So if I was in the position where CS Courier is, I'll really be saying these are the benefits of this small enterprise joining the chamber. And then looking at the chamber itself, how can we streamline in terms of small businesses joining? There's something very interesting with the informal sector in this country. As much as we appreciate, and I think we really appreciate, how can you bring formality in informal sector? The moment you try to kill that informality in them, you lose them. One, their mind is very clear. You're here so that we can pay taxes. That's why you want to formalize us, so that we can pay. And it's good for them to pay taxes. And they can do it without you telling them, saying you must join. That word of must, it's a very interesting thing when you start saying even at the household level, you must. Then I want to rebel. And
it's mandatory.
Yeah, and I remember one time when I went to, the first time I went to the UK to do my master's in Lancaster University, and a friend called Yam, wherever he is, he was from Hong Kong. And God, I hope you see what you can imagine the first movie we watched. Because it was banned in Hong Kong, it was banned in Kenya. We were curious. Why have they banned it? So when you start bringing regulation, no, you can't do this, you mandatory, you must join, then that's the first thing I will not. I go back to the same Isaac Quantum. Tact. It's making a point without creating an enemy.
And I think the other thing, Debal, that I think we
Before you even latch into what you want to say, because I wanted just to get clarity from you, because you say this is another chamber or a national chamber that is the government is trying to create. But according to my readings here, it is him, the CEO, saying it is mandatory for them to join so that they may strengthen the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
I think that is somebody else quoting that. Because when you talk about chamber, everybody's mind goes to Chamber of Commerce and Industry, right? If you listen to what he said, he didn't say National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, he said a business chamber. And people think when they talk about chamber, it goes to that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the way people think. And I think what I was going to say is, one of the things you've got to grapple with in this whole space of business representation is that a lot of these associations are struggling to get fees to survive. Membership fees. Because the members are saying, why should I pay fees? What am I getting out of these places? So it doesn't matter who it is, right? Apart from apart from the Kenya Chamber of the Law Society of Kenya, where you have to pay to be a member. By law, it is created by law. And I think the accountants is the same.
ISPAC.
Right? ISPAC is the same thing. So there's a few of them which are mandated by law. For you to become a practicing member, you have to pay to belong to that. Now, you cannot do that to business. You can do it for practicing professionals, right, who need a license, whatever it is, and so forth. But when you now want to make it mandatory to pay a levy as a business, I think we're going the wrong way. You have to create value. And when you look at the business associations, that's where they're suffering. And if you look at KEPSA, you look at the chamber, you look at all these organizations, all of them are fighting to get membership. So somebody somewhere has had a word in the ear of the CS and said, you must make this happen. We don't have money. Yeah? So make it mandatory and people pay, then we will have money. So I think here you also see whatever it is, the tension that is going on amongst what I call the big business associations, trying to get attention and getting money by making it mandatory rather than making it attracting people because of the services you offer. And I think for the future, for this world to go, for this country to work well, we have to make those business associations attract membership through services they offer. And the chambers should not be made for external contact. They should be made for growing businesses internally in Kenya. So we begin to become a working nation, not one that is looking for other people outside to invest. We have to make it possible for Kenyans to invest and survive in Kenya. Yeah. And I think in previous, whatever it is, in previous discussions we've had, I mean, Bill has been saying, businesses are suffering in this country. So how are we going to make those businesses thrive? That is not something that needs any chamber. It needs government policy that actually creates an environment and incentives for businesses to grow. Once our businesses grow internally, then we can start thinking about partnerships globally. Then a chamber will, or whatever business association, will now begin to look for links outside because their
Partners with the
membership
others, yeah.
is now looking for those kind of things, right? And going back to where I started, Ken Invest is where you really, that's what you need to go out. The Kenya National Investment Organization. That's who the minister needs to walk around with when he goes out to look for investments.
Right.
He doesn't need to come with all these business people who go on a joyride but are never going to do anything else.
Yeah.
What you need are 3 businesses that are successful, that their leaders can afford to travel with you to go and talk about Kenya and how good it is to invest in Kenya. How many businesses in Kenya will travel of their own volition to go and attract businesses to Kenya? Because if I'm a successful business in Kenya and Kenya works, I'll be looking for more people to come and invest here so I can get, if I give service, I get goods and everything else, those people are going to create my customers. So whilst it may sound a good idea, I'm still a bit skeptical about the way you want to create, an organization that you have to pay for. If you do, let's follow one that has been successful. But it's been successful only because you have a very, very strong business base inside the country. And here we don't. You went to visit the Confederation of Business Industry in the UK, right? Theirs is optional. But because of the success that they've had in using the membership base that they had to go out and look for opportunities to invest as a business industry, because they had big, British Steel, you had all these car manufacturers, you had all these people, those are the members.
Right.
And they're saying now,
Right.
we want to export cars to South Africa or whatever it is. Let's go to South Africa as a chamber, right? And go and look for opportunities to invest. And it is driven by the large corporations, a large investment, the companies who want to go and invest outside, not government. And the same with the US chamber. The American Chamber of Commerce that you have here is actually driven from the US. And they have branches across the whole world. And what they're doing, they've got all their companies in the US who are members of that thing in Kenya. And they're looking for opportunities to invest in Kenya. And it's driven by the parent companies inside that country, not by the government. So business drives it. Which businesses in Kenya are going to drive an association to invest outside? Kenya needs inward investment, and that is not the role
That's
of
the
businesses.
point, inward investment.
All right, let's leave it at that, and we look at what is happening also in the oil sector, where Tullow Oil PLC, a global independent oil and gas exploration and production firm, has taken full control of the project Oil Kenya development in Turkana County, following the withdrawal of its joint venture partners Africa Oil Corp and Total Energies. With the departure of its partners, Tullow now hold 100% equity position in the project, pending approval from the government of Kenya. Tullow Kenya Managing Director Madan Srivasan said the firm is engaging strategic partners who have expressed an interest in the project based on its economic viability. He says Project Oil Kenya is a low-cost development project that has the potential to unlock material value. A prospective strategic partner remain engaged, and detailed farm-out discussions continue with a number of companies. Tullow Oil received notification from its minority partners about the intention to withdraw from Block 10BB, 13T and 10BA in the South Lokichar Basin due to differing internal strategic reasons, they put it here. As a result, Tullow's working interest in these blocks will increase from 50% to 100%. But let's just listen in to what the CS had to say regarding this, and then we will try and unpack that particular story.
I think it will cost us some 3.4 billion to develop the whole infrastructure or setup before production. And what, in terms of the product and the quantity that we'll sell, what will be the revenue, and therefore we will be advising this House and the country that, yes, it's a profitable business to go to. This was basically almost an experiment to prepare the country for fast oil. It was a pilot, early oil pilot scheme to prepare the infrastructure, to prepare ourselves, to prepare the capacity of our people in terms of county preparedness, to prepare those bridges that even one lorry could not pass through. But more importantly, I don't think from the economics of transporting crude oil, it would make sense to transport crude by road. We'll need to either, through this field development plan, confirm the commerciality, economic commerciality of building a pipeline or building a refinery, and that will come to this House, honorable members.
Now, you want to pick up the Standard today to read an editorial there where it is asking, tell Kenyans the whole truth about Turkana oil. I'll spare you the details from the beginning there. I begin on this second paragraph where they're saying the lofty dreams now appears to be falling apart. The biggest blow has been the withdrawal of two of the joint venture partners in the project Oil Kenya. Cadet Farm, Africa Oil, and French oil major Total have quit the project, leaving Tullow Oil as the only driver of the dream. Let's talk about this strategic partner here. Three different firms indicating they are no longer interested in the project Oil Kenya, with the revelations coming only days apart, is not only a major setback, but also begs the question, what could be the problem? Is it that the doing business environment in Kenya, especially for the fledgling oil sector, is not supportive for the players, including new entrants? Tullow Oil and its partners have for years been looking for a strategic partner. The new firm, the partners in the past have said, will be the one that carries the project through the commercial phase. Progress has been slow, and it is only last year that the company said the two Indian firms had expressed interest. What could be the factor that has been repelling companies from joining the project to get the oil off the ground? Another probable question. Although Tullow has over the years said the oil is adequate for commercial venture, is this actually the case, or have these companies stumbled upon information that tells otherwise? Could it be that while the quantity is commercially viable, the quality of Kenyan oil turns off investment or investors? Is it that the hype around renewable energy has watered down the prospects of fossil fuels, and emerging oil provinces such as Kenya can no longer attract huge investment in the sector that is deemed a major polluter? The government owes Kenyans the truth. Should the country continue hanging on hopes that it can eventually earn petrodollars, when at every turn this dream is usually pushed further into the future? That is the editorial today in the Standard. Patrick Obato, you want to pick up on this, because this is really right up your alley.
It has been needful.
Yeah, so there's no escaping on this. You can tell us more on this latest development so far. And while this is happening, we know Nigeria also has just launched the biggest oil rig, isn't it?
Oil refinery.
Oil refinery.
It's actually a petrochemical complex, it's not an oil refinery. No.
And Uganda has been
talking about putting its pipeline.
Has it? It's launched their project actually.
It's launched the project, but I have my
reservations about it.
Also going nuclear.
I have, from the time Uganda discovered oil and then Kenya discovered oil, 2010, round about 2011, 12, that period. When that happened, I was asked the question. Then I was actually in the industry deep in, and I said, good, we're going to get our oil in 5 years. I said, no, 2025 earliest. That was in 2010, 2011, when we were discovering oil. We are not yet reached 2025. And I think, given the circumstances that there are now, even that 2025 is a dream. And let me explain why. When you've got that, you've got to build up sufficient oil, proven reserves that you can get out, that will give you a field life of 10 years plus after you have actually started. Because 10 years, 5 years or thereabouts of oil selling will be to recover the costs. 5 to 7 years will be to recover the cost. And it's both cost oil, which is repaying the explorer for all the money that they have used to explore, plus paying for the value of the infrastructure that you put in to export the oil, And then after that, you start making money. So you can see, if you look at the amount of money that is involved in that place, it is huge. So you need reasonable reserves, and you need to be able to pump it out at a certain rate to be able to generate the dollars that are coming through. Now, what we have here is marginal.
Yeah.
And what Uganda has is marginal if you treat them as individual investments. And right from the beginning, I've always said that we need to remove the boundaries, look at these two marginal pools, put them together as one investment, and then you can start talking about getting value out of them. You're having two parallel pipelines who are going to be fighting for markets. These two investments, if you only had them as one, you'd have actually built one pipeline, which was the original idea from that time. Now, that one pipeline would have been viable, but politics got in the way. So that is pipeline. And the CS talked about refineries. I don't talk about refineries anymore. Refineries are not being built. We are building petrochemical complexes. So, and that requires a certain minimum size. Dangote has built one in Nigeria, which is 650,000 barrels per day. That is economically viable in this day and age. But to build it at that level, you need to be able to amortize that investment in 10 to 12 years. Now, 650,000 barrels a day over that period of time is a lot of oil. Kenya and Uganda combined do not have enough oil to be able to amortize a refinery of that size, a petrochemical complex. The smallest size that you have to get in order to be commercially viable is about 400,000 barrels a day, which is competing with the ones that are in the Middle East in terms of bringing products. The petrochemicals, the oil that we have, is best processed so that it becomes beyond the fuel that we consume. You get value when you take it to the next level and you start producing fertilizers, you start producing textiles, you start producing pharmaceuticals,
Plastics.
and plastics and whatever it is. When you go to that level is when you're going to begin to recoup the investment.
That's the petrochemical part. of it.
Petrochemical part of it. That's the only way to get value out of oil at the moment. Now, put in the issue about the pollution and global warming. If you've read about the Ugandan pipeline, a lot of the debt financiers pulled out because a lot of those organizations globally are no longer supporting investment in fossil fuels. Now here you have another pipeline which has got the same thing and will need a lot of money. Unless somebody is able to put in equity, it will not run. And getting debt is not easy in this day and age. And the people who can put equity in or even put debt in are people who have a dim view about global warming. And currently, which countries have got that dim view about global warming and are investing? Look at the countries that are still investing in coal. Look at the countries that are using oil. Basically China, Russia. So the pullout of people like Africa Oil and Total is because of the issue that they could not get debt to come into that equation. So it meant that Total and Africa Oil
Total even pulled out of the Uganda one.
Yeah, they
it
did.
means they would have to put their own money in. And that's a lot of money for something that is condemned in terms of global warming, climate change. So a lot of oil companies are putting their money into what is called transition fuels, which is natural gas and stuff like that, which is better than hydrocarbon that the oil that you're using, and is a step towards getting to renewables and green energy. That's where the money is going. So anybody who's got equity is putting it in that area. Debt will not service what you're doing in terms of pipelines. So, to cut a long story short, my view on the last question that is there is that this is almost going to be a stillbirth. The only thing we can get out of that is if we combine with Uganda and with the South Sudan and put up a petrochemical complex that is not going to make fuel. It's going to be looking at making value add at the very end. And if you do that, you will then have local further value addition. If you're producing pharmaceutical grade raw material, you can start having pharmaceutical companies coming to Kenya and East Africa. So it's a big game. And I think as a country, we should really dampen our hopes around oil becoming the next big thing in this country. That's my view.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not a very positive.
Is this latest development, could
yeah.
we also peg it on what the president, when he was down in South Africa, and they had a climate conference, and by the way, also the climate conference will be happening in September.
Yeah.
The president made the assertion that we need to at least think about and make difficult decisions regarding fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Right? Could that also sentiment could have spurred this latest development, as Patrick Obath says, the reality on the ground is we are transitioning to renewable energies. That has become the buzzword. It is highly fetishized by everyone, talking about environmental, social governance.
No, I don't. I don't share that view. This thing is about interests. When Western countries, those organizations and those financiers are dealing with these issues, they look at the interests largely by the nations. When America under Trump decided to go back to fossil fuels, he didn't have a lot of objections in this country. They looked at it from the economic point of view and the challenges of oil and energy, globally. But when you look at a third world country that is looking for opportunities to invest in that, then the questions of, you've seen what happened to Uganda. They came under sustained pressure from the same countries, and so. But I think the issue really is sometimes it's the opacity, around these issues that makes sometimes investors. For example, this Tulo thing. If we've been reading the last few years, the government is the one that they have not been able to agree with the government on their production sharing ratio, on how to recoup their losses or their investments and so forth. And that process itself of the audit and agreeing on those numbers took years. The same Tulo has been saying in 2021 that the proven reserves are in excess of $200 billion. But they also said 80% of that oil is actually not extractable because of lack of technology to extract that kind of oil in Uganda, in Turkana. They said so. Nobody. The question is what exactly the standard is saying. The truth around this whole thing. When your government is not transparent, you don't know what is going on. Is it the problem of the investors? Is it the problem of the government? Is it the problem of the nature of the oil? A few 100,000 tons was exported, and we were all excited. It was launched, and then suddenly everything has collapsed. And so there's a lot about government and its policy really when it comes to oil. And this is why Uganda changed their mind and went their own way across Lake Victoria and the other side. It was easier and cheaper for them through here. And they say it's because of the Kenyan government, so I agree with him that it's a long shot. You see, today in business they're saying the government requires 469 billion investment to get that oil out. I mean, you don't need money, government, to do this thing. You need to get investors. Investors will be interested in the terms. They're interested in the environment. They're interested in so many factors. So to keep saying government needs this, government needs that, I don't think the issue is really government. The issue is there are issues surrounding this matter, and I think the standard raised the fundamental question: why are all the others pulling out? And I think it's and there's I don't agree that funding is. There are countries that you can get money from. The same China and the same other. There are markets which will give you money in the Asian countries. We don't look at those.
That is why Sinok is the only company that is left in Uganda.
Yes.
With Tullow.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And they're the ones who are investing,
Correct.
right? So you can, as I said, you can get it from other
From
countries,
other countries, yes.
other than the traditional
in
countries.
Sudan, in South Sudan, it's most of the funding, most of the companies involved are Chinese companies.
And Malaysia.
And Malaysia. And so you can't get access to funding from Asian countries. But like I said, there are issues around government and policy and regulatory and which needs to be addressed, which is our concern as Kenya really is about what is the transparency around this issue, what is going on.
Let me put something else. I think this one I'll
Allow me to take a short break, then we circle back with more. And even as we mull over tallow oil, I'm just looking back at a Nairobi Law Monthly magazine, I think in September 2019, that also, since now they're taking 100% share, my director might just pick up this inside tallow oil tax dodging racket that it has been embroiled in, the tax evasion. Now it's owning 100% of it. The government is crying foul regarding taxes as well. Could also this be probed right now that is coming to the fore, that now you're owning 100% of it? We should just read a snippet of it as well on the other side of the break. Don't go away, you're watching Sokoni here on Morning Prime.